if you knew you were enough? What would your life look like? What would love look like? This is the Enough Factor broadcast, where we're redefining what makes you enough in life and in love. Now here's your host, S3-E13. Hello and welcome to the Enough Factor podcast. I'm your life coach and relationship solutionist, S3-E13, and I am excited to share some of the insights I've gained finding love later in life, especially since most of the women I talk to are over 40, have had at least one divorce, and have difficulties navigating this technologically enhanced dating world. I hope that what I share today will help you focus on what matters most, so you can appreciate and approach relationships with more ease, more clarity, and more confidence. But before we launch too far into today's episode, I want to acknowledge those who listen to the podcast every week. Without you, there would be no podcast. So I'm thankful for you, my Enough Warriors. And if you just discovered this podcast, it is as its name suggests. It's about your enough factor, your voice, your value, and your vision. What I believe are three critical factors of enoughness. The mission of this podcast is to amplify those areas so you can experience love and life in a brand new way. So, as I consider this whole finding love later in life, I thought about the women who struggle with the lateness of the hour, that whole later in life thing. The millennial who, while happy for her friends, feels like the clock is ticking and she's wondering when it's going to be her turn and if she'll find Mr. Right in time. I thought about the women who got married but whose marriage ended in divorce. And while she was young when she got married, she is now 40-something and alone. And though she has this adulting thing down, she secretly wonders if love really exists. And if it does, if it's in the cards for her. And even more recently, I thought about the 60-year-old woman who commented on a social media post that she couldn't get her 70-year-old friend whom she was in love with to move in with her. And she was wondering, what am I doing wrong? Today's episode is about these women who struggle with the lateness of love, the laterness of it, and wonder if or when they will ever experience real love. Now, while I don't have a crystal ball and I cannot promise that real love will show up in your timetable looking like you want it to look, I do believe that real love is our birthright. We just have to update our expectations from meeting a timetable to having an experience. That's the premise behind my Doing Love Differently program. In fact, earlier this week during a coaching call with one of the participants, we talked about one of the modules, attracting Mr. Wrongs. Something that you have to stop doing if you want to have a different experience of love. And there are two fundamental takeaways that I want to talk about today and I want you to consider, okay? 1, you've got to stop allowing your 5-year-old self to pick your relationships. Though 5 years is an arbitrary number, the point I'm making is you have to stop letting your immaturity pick your relationship. In order to do that, you have to recognize when your inner 5-year-old has jumped into the driver's seat of the car. One way to recognize her is the first words out of her mouth are, I want him to stop, right? Or he won't, or he said, or I don't know what he wants, or I told him he needs to decide what he wants. Or, well, what can I do when he won't, dot, dot, dot. You ask her what she wants, and she says, I don't know, because he won't, dot, 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 right? Even if she comes off strong, saying, I don't need a man, or if he ain't going to change then, or I'm sick of men doing. The fact that she's focused on him means that the 5-year-old is alive and well. In order to feel powerful, she has to make someone else less in some way, less worthy, less valuable. And you know what? That's what bullies do. Even if there is no man in your life right now, if you're doing that, you are still bullying a memory where you didn't feel powerful. You cannot find love later in life if you're doing that. Matter of fact, you cannot find love later in life until you get your 5-year-old self out of the driver's seat. So that's the first point. The second takeaway is something that might surprise you, but it's just as critical. Just because you're a grown-up doesn't qualify you to drive. So you might remove your 5-year-old self from behind the wheel. But just because you're a grown-up, it still doesn't mean that you're qualified to drive the car. The only way you're qualified to drive is if you have a driver's license. Age alone does not qualify you to drive the car. Think about it. If you get pulled for speeding, running a red light, or some other traffic violation, the officer asks for 2 things: your driver's license and the vehicle registration. So you have to have a license to drive. And just as it's a process to get that driver's license, there is a process to being ready for a real loving relationship. Yet all too often, it is believed that real love is supposed to come easy. Now here's the truth. If you've grown up with that ideology, then no, you are not ready for a real loving relationship. You are not ready to drive the car. That kind of thinking runs red lights, ignores speed limits, bursts through roadblocks, and puts yourself and others at risk. So the second thing required is becoming competent in how you do love. In fact, it's the reason I created Doing Love Differently. It's for those who acknowledge that the way they've been doing love isn't working, and it hasn't worked, and their indifference changes nothing. And to those who would say, I'm waiting on God, I'm going to let God pick my husband, my response is this: how would you know? You haven't gotten clarity about the last relationship and the role you played in it. You haven't gotten clarity around the beliefs underneath the surface. You haven't even dealt with that. You haven't done anything to learn better. And if you haven't, then relying on God to do the heavy lifting is just plain lazy. I don't mean to sound indifferent or like I don't understand what you've been through, but I gotta tell you the truth. And even if you're happy being single, that doesn't mean you are ready for real love. So I ask you again, how would you know? If you haven't done the work to become more knowledgeable about yourself, about relationships, about you in relationships, about how real love shows up and how to recognize it, how would you know? It doesn't matter how many scriptures you can quote. If you don't know how to apply them, how would you know? You see, I married the wrong man twice because I didn't understand that in order to change my experience, I had to change. I convinced myself that the time we spent apart had made him a better man, simply because he said that he promised God that if God gave him another chance, he would be better. See, I was relying on what he said. I had not done work on me, because had I done the work to do love differently, I believe I would have been wiser. But because I had not changed the locks to my mind and to my heart, he could still gain access. So I ask again, how would you know? Will it be because everybody around you likes him? Will it be because he's a good father? Will it be because he's sincere about his walk with God? Will it be because he loves his mother? Will it be because he has ambition? Will it be because he buys you gifts? Will it be because he dotes on you? I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I have to tell you, these are all 5-year-old standards. Yes, even if he's sincere about his walk with God, that still does not mean he's mature enough to be in a loving, intimate relationship. He may have some more growing to do, and he might not be compatible with you. You see, 5-year-olds fall in love with ideals. It looks good. It sounds good. You buy me a doll, I like you. You buy me ice cream, I like you. You tell me I'm pretty, I like you. You pay attention, I like you. You told your pastor about me, I like you. You gave me money to pay my light bill, I like you. Graves are full of women who committed to an ideal and did not wait for the smoke to clear on the realities. I'm going to say that again. Graves are full of women who committed to an ideal and did not wait for the smoke to clear on the realities. And while all those things I've mentioned are nice, they mean nothing if the man is stuck at 5 years old too. If he has no self-control, if he doesn't keep his word, if he is demeaning when he gets upset, if he's inflexible, if he isn't a safe place for you to be vulnerable, if he can't have a conversation about what really, really matters, if drama follows him like the stench follows a skunk, if his capacity to love is only as big as his reflection in the mirror, he's still stuck in 5 years old. I remember a back in the day friend of mine telling me he was getting married. And when I asked him why, he said that one of his criteria was that the woman he married had to be willing to be a first lady because he was going to pastor a church. Sadly, the marriage did not last. Real love isn't concerned about titles and appearances, and it doesn't approach love like a person would doing a job interview. Real love doesn't care about whether something looks good or sounds good. Real love doesn't live on the surface. Real love lives down deep where truth resides. That's where real love lies. So, to recap, to find love later in life, two things are critical. One, you have to stop letting your 5-year-old in the driver's seat of your relationships. You have to stop letting her control your love life. You have to stop letting her pick your relationships. And two, even if you are a grown-up, you still need a license to drive. You aren't automatically eligible for real love just because you've got some age on you or you've been through some things. Just because I've gotten into some wrecks while driving doesn't qualify me to get behind the wheel of a brand new car. It certainly doesn't qualify me for a safe driving award because I'm still bringing my no driving, wreck-prone self to any car I get in. That's why over the next several weeks, I'll be talking with some other truth tellers. What I love about these guests is they found love later in life and have some insights about what it takes to be in a committed relationship and the relationship skills they've had to develop. They've had to face some blind spots, some tough realities, and most of all, dig deeper into the soil of their enoughness to find the competent one. Now, I'm not going to give you their names or their topics because the 5-year-old you may feel like you don't need to listen to them. Well, let me tell you, you need to listen to every single person. My hope is by listening to them, you'll dig down into your own soil for truth. For some of you, digging into that soil will require insight, accountability, and support. It'll take a complete refurbishing of how you think about love, how you approach it, and how you show up. Relationships, after all, are about choosing to relate. You don't fall into them. It's an intention that comes from being clear about who you are, whose you are, and why you are, and confidently bringing that person into your relationship space. In fact, this Love Later in Life series is being brought to you by Doing Love Differently, my 3-month program. If the way you're doing relationships isn't working, it's time to do love differently, to end the cycle of self-betrayal, mistrust, and attracting Mr. Wrongs. To find out more, simply go to SuzetteSolutions.com/our programs. As I draw to a close, I want to leave you with this. Love isn't about fantasy. Love is a choice that you make for what you choose to believe, who you choose to be, and what you choose to accept. There is no falling into it unless you're 5 years old. Grown people choose what they do, who they spend their lives with, and what they wish to share with whom. So join me right back here next Sunday for our kickoff speaker. Until next time, I want you to remember that you are worthy, you are worth it, you are more than enough. Bye. You have just listened to the Enough Factor podcast with your host, Suzette Vernon. To get notified of new episodes or to dig deeper into today's topic, become a subscriber. And while you're at it, tell us how we're doing and what topics you're interested in. We appreciate your feedback and your reviews. Until next time, remember, you are worthy, you are worth it, You are enough.